Let's talk a little bit about spying and the Patriot Act. There's this provision that was put into the Patriot Act originally, which was called a sneak and peek delayed warrant. And the goal of including this in the Patriot Act was specifically for situations related to terrorism. So this is the scenario that was drawn up as kind of the reason to have the ability to have a sneak and peek delayed warrant. You suspect someone is involved in terrorist activity, but tipping them off to the fact that you're investigating them might make them either act more quickly or it might make them destroy evidence. So this provision says if there is a suspected terrorist or someone who you want to investigate, you can go in and do a sneak and peek to their home or electronically. And this can include taking pictures, smelling, taking measurements, looking at computer files, etc. And only afterwards must they be notified that there was this delayed warrant and that they were sneaked and peeked against. Now, let's be very, very clear. We were told this was for terrorism, but we now have a new report from the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which found, after reviewing reports that were released by the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, that only 51 sneak and peek requests during 2013 were actually for terrorism. Now you might say, well, David, 51 out of how many? 51 out of 11,129 total requests. Lewis, if you had to guess, it's not terrorism. What are these sneak and peek delayed warrant requests actually being used to investigate?
Drugs?
Absolutely. Absolutely spot on, Lewis. The numbers, this is a quote from Mark Jaycox at the EFF. The numbers vindicate privacy advocates who urged Congress to shelve this section during the Patriot Act debates. Proponents of this section claimed sneak and peek warrants were needed to protect against terrorism, but just like we've seen elsewhere, these claims were false. Yet another way, Lewis, in which the eagerness of the American people post 9/11 to accept almost anything that might even have a small chance of keeping them safer, understandably, we're not criticizing anyone for this, has been used to prop up and further the failed, pathetic, and embarrassing war on drugs. There is a direct connection now that we can see between 9/11 through the Patriot Act into the war on drugs and the incarceration of nonviolent drug offenders. This is so embarrassing.
And I bet right now there are a lot of people in Canada that are looking at this situation and thinking to themselves, we can't let this happen up here.
I hope they are, because as we talked about, Prime Minister Stephen Harper in Canada, in the wake of the Ottawa shooting, which tragically did lead to a casualty, they are now trying to fast track the expansion of spying powers and police powers. Just look at what happened here. Lies about the number of thwarted terror attacks, a 99% usage that is not terrorism related of a provision that was meant specifically to fight terror. They should be paying very close attention, Lewis, to these reports.
Definitely. I have a hard time imagining the exact same type of legislation happening in Canada, but you never know.